Ian Anderson of Jethro Tull, and the problem with the Aqualung album cover, and that's the biggest one from Jethro Tull. Our special guest is Ian Anderson on Rocky Stream Music. Here's the top 10 sales for Jethro Tull albums worldwide. Minstrel in the Gallery from 1975 is their 10th biggest record with almost 600,000 sales worldwide. Number 9, A Passion Play from 73 comes in at 560,000 copies worldwide. Stand Up at number 8 from 1969. Again, 560,000 copies. Heavy Horses, number 7 from 1978, which was one of the first ones I ever bought, at 610,000 sales worldwide. Number 6, Songs from the Wood from 77, 610,000 worldwide. Same amount, 610,000 for Bursting Out, the double album from 78 at number 5. Crest of the Knave in 1987. 650,000. Number 4. Number 3 is Original Masters from 1985. It sold 1.1 million. And number 2 is The Best of Jethro Tull from 75 at 1.3. The number 1 album at 7 million copies is Aqualung from 1971. We talked to Ian Anderson, a brand new interview. We're going to include some bonus clips from the 7 other interviews we've done with him in this as well, talking about some of the top albums from their repertoire on Rock History Music. The Aqualung cover, is it true that you weren't really crazy about that cover?
No, Terry, our manager, had seen some artwork, I think on the cover of Time magazine or somewhere. He'd seen something that this particular American artist had done and thought, oh, out of the blue, just thought, I'll get in touch with this guy and see if he'll do an album cover. He was a watercolorist, and and so he got in touch with him, and the guy came over to London where we were rehearsing, and I think took some photographs of, particularly of me when we were rehearsing. And I remember wearing my father's old overcoat and, kind of posing for some photographs, and kind of looking like a homeless person. And I think he based his watercolor painting on one of those photos, which depicted me as the character Aqualung. And when I saw what he'd done, I said, no, 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 this is not about me. I am not the guy in the song. The guy in the song is actually a different guy. He's actually in a photograph taken by my first wife, who was studying photography at the time in London. And some assignment was to go and photograph homeless people living in South London under a railway arch. And she'd taken a photograph of this guy, and that's when I saw this photograph, and I was struck by his demeanor, a mixture of suspicion, fear, and a tinge of aggression, being photographed by a relatively young girl, and that's where the idea for the song came up, which we sat down and I said, right, let's write a song about this guy. And it's the one and only time I've ever co-written the lyrics to a song. And some of those words are very much her words, not mine. Some of them are mine and not hers. But it was a song of compassion, talking about someone who, as I say, exhibited that mixture of fear and aggression, and to which we reply with a sense of nervousness, of maybe disdain. And hopefully with compassion, that we sort of want to help, even though sometimes we're a little embarrassed to do that. And I mean, right now, in fact, I was just before I spoke to you, I was looking at the artwork of the soon to be re-released and remixed and remastered version of Aqualung Live that we recorded in a studio in Washington, I think. And I've just read the liner notes and I've forgotten already what I said about it back then. But yes, it was it was that album was released back then with half of the royalties going to homeless charities, and so yes, it was something that is kind of payback time, really. That's why we recorded it, and we got the rights from the radio station to release that as a piece of album product.
When's that coming up?
Well, I've only just approved the artwork today, so I guess the usual timeline is probably going to be about, I would think, 2 or 3 months from now. It might come out. It had to steer clear of the previous album released in March, and there's also the Living in the Past re-release from Warner Music.
Which I have back here. Yes. Mm.
Yeah, so my guess is it would be sometime probably early in the what you call the fall.
Ian Anderson, what's your take on luck?
I mean, I think I'd use the word chance rather than luck because luck
Mm.
sounds, although we do talk about bad luck, we more often think of luck coming our way when perhaps it's an idea for a song or it's a career possibility that perhaps comes up through a crossroad, a dividing option in our lives where we can turn left or we can turn right, and we make a choice, and hopefully it's a lucky choice. But I think that plays a big part in success, and I would always say to other young musicians starting off, you could be a great musician, have seemingly everything on paper, and you write great songs, and you have great musical ability and performance skills, etc., etc. But you still need that bit of, well, not just a bit, a lot of luck. It's about being in the right place at the right time. And quite clearly, there's certain kinds of musician at the moment, you're unlikely to get a record deal and have a huge success because that's not what, commercially speaking, the world wants. So it's not a very good time for people who do more esoteric or progressive rock or folk music to get started. It's going to be a real tough slog, and you're going to have luck on your side as well as being really good at what you do. And so if good luck comes along, don't turn it down. Grasp it with both hands and be prepared to try and utilize it and develop from it. But if you depend upon good luck, then you're likely to be disappointed because it probably won't come your way. And which is why I'd say to young musicians, it's the old adage, don't give up your day job. If you have the opportunity to study for something professionally and you can keep that going while you make your attempt to succeed as a musician, you've always got that to fall back on, and with no regrets, because to be an amateur musician should not be a matter of failure or a second-rate musical output. Amateur comes from the word amo in Latin, to love. And that's the first and most important thing. If you love music, then enjoy performing it, even if there's no one to listen to. You can still get a lot of pleasure out of performing music just for yourself or for your family or friends or a small group, or playing in a bar or a local pub. I mean, you don't have to necessarily be in the Billboard top 100 or playing at Carnegie Hall to be successful. You can be successful in different levels. No feeling of it being second rate. To be an amateur musician is still a great, enjoyable place to be in. And I usually quote, for example, for 3 days a week, 4 days a week, I am an amateur musician. I was playing my guitar this morning and playing through a few songs, a couple of which, things that I'm playing on stage. A couple of other things were things that I haven't played on stage for a long time, but I was just playing them anyway because it was a guitar that just came back from being, refurbished and reconditioned, and I wanted to check it out. And so, I'm doing that in an amateur capacity. I'm doing it just because I enjoy doing it. And I think that's really important, that you're able, regardless of your professional success, to still enjoy the simple pleasures of being an amateur, doing it for love, not for money.
Ian Anderson, he's still learning things. He's still going, what happens if I touch this? Well, I'm going to try better over here, because you seem like a reserved person to me. Every time I've talked to you, I've felt that, but you've always given me good interviews, so I'm okay. But there's something about but you're still learning then. You're still consciously making that machine of yours work better.
It's the title of the new album, Curious Ruminant. I have unending curiosity about a number of subjects. I'm a ruminant in the sense of ruminating, of thinking about things, dwelling upon them, taking it in, working out my position. So that's the title track of the album, Curious Ruminant, and that's me. And indeed, that's what I would hope other people would take from it, that, we should all have curiosity. We should all want to learn something new and possibly rethink our position. But it doesn't have to be a final position because I always reserve the right to change my mind in the light of further information, more information, a different analysis. And so, I read pretty much every day. I probably read five or six national and international newspapers, as well as, watching BBC and CNN and even Fox News, the Jerusalem Post I read, the English language Ukraine newspaper I read, because I want to find out what's going on and what different takes people have on the same subject. Very often because of political slant, sometimes because the media is actually controlled by rather dictatorial world leaders who actually restrict the freedom of the press. Certainly in the USA, I mean, in a Trump world, trying to control the media and getting really, really, really upset when freedom of expression is manifested. It's a bit like, maybe between Orange Man and Battery Boy. They can't, they like to dish it out, but they can't take any criticism. And
Who's
Battery
Battery
Boy
Boy?
by Musk.
Oh, yeah. Oh, of course,
He
battery.
he
Duh.
is always going on about freedom of speech and blah 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 blah. But anybody says anything that criticizes him, he just gets totally bent out of shape. And so freedom of speech is good, but it has to work in both directions, and it should be restrained. Freedom of speech is great in a democratic society, but we have to exercise that freedom of speech in an adult, in a respectful way, not to just go out there and go "Wah," in a torrent of abuse and blame people. The world of vengeance and retribution in the media is as bad as it is in Gaza or or in Taliban-controlled Afghanistan. Retribution. It's about getting back at people who have done something bad. I mean, again, that's why I'm a supporter of Christianity, because the Christian ethic of turn the other cheek, and whether Jesus of Nazareth, who they call Jesus Christ, Jesus of Nazareth was a rather bolshy Jewish prophet. But he seems, if we believe the word of the disciples and those who wrote down their words as it was passed on over the next 50 to 100 years and formed the New Testament, then we would have to conclude that, Jesus sounds like he was a pretty regular guy. He spoke a lot of good sense, and he was a tolerant man who believed in a degree of equality, but wasn't afraid to stand up and describe himself bewilderingly to a degree as the Son of God. But I think I understand what he was saying, because it goes back a little bit to the song My God. What he was saying is, my Father, God, and I, we are part of, we are one. And it is that sense that I think is quite an important one in religion. You either have a non-dualistic belief, or you have a dualistic belief in God being totally separate from man, or perhaps my more general philosophy of God and not just man, but any conscious being. Consciousness is hard to define an amoeba as being conscious, but you can, or a tree, but you can certainly define a small mammal as being conscious. You can describe a fish as being conscious. Consciousness is everything, and consciousness and the idea that we and God are all part of that that consciousness on a universal level. That's, I suppose, to me quite important, and that is the non-dualistic belief that, as I say, I don't believe. I just like the idea of probabilities. So you can
Right.
put me down as a non-dualist who doesn't believe in the separation of God as this sort of rather Michelangelo kind of God, and Christ being the mysterious Son of God. Christ is an avatar in that sense. Is that's the role. Muhammad is an avatar for Allah, and I think that's okay. Hinduism is full of avatars. Hinduism, I mean, 300 odd gods. Take your choice. It's usually a family thing. In this family, they tend to, believe in the elephant god. So it will be passed on through a family usually. That this is our god. But that god is just an avatar of the primal force behind Hinduism, which doesn't, for me, argue with the Abrahamic religions at all, because we believe in one God. We Jews, Islamists, and Christians, we believe in one God. That's kind of easier than polytheistic beliefs, which get terribly complicated. But in most cases, my understanding from polytheistic beliefs is that they tend to be somewhere at the pinnacle of it all. There is a single creative entity who is usually quite abstract and beyond description. And I like that. That's the way it should be. We shouldn't try to personify God. It's not going to work.
Thick as a Brick turns 50 this year. What's the box set going to look like?
Well, Thick as a Brick was amply dispatched at the age of 40 in terms of box sets and so on, with Thick as a Brick being remixed by Stephen Wilson, and the subsequent Thick as a Brick 2 in 2012. They were bundled together as a big box set. More than that, I can't do, because Thick as a Brick was written as a project with that music only. There are no outtakes. There are no additional songs or parts. It is what it is. It is. And back then, of course, there were no live performances that were recorded. So I'm afraid if Thick as a Brick 50th anniversary, you've just got to go back and with a big Sharpie and put a 5 where the 4 used to be.
There's a lot of genres going on. I remember someone coming to my house when I was a kid, and someone said, "This is the most complex music I've ever heard. There's like every genre in the world being played on this album." What was your approach to that, to putting that together?
Well, I wasn't really thinking about anything other than the last 3 minutes of music that I'd written, because I would, when we were working on the album, I would write 3 minutes of music in the morning, and then go to meet the other guys in the band in the afternoon, and we would rehearse the new stuff and add it on to what we did the day before, and we gradually built up an album. But it was a very organic growth. We would recap on what we'd done as we went along, so there was some direction that I could apply perhaps the following morning when I went to write the next few minutes. But it wasn't really in my head to try and give it any particular shape or otherwise. The underlying notion was music that was, or rather lyrics that were written by an 8-year-old precocious schoolboy learning to cope with being a child in an adult world, and coping with some of the stereotypes and prejudices that you face, and are a little confusing perhaps as a child, and maybe even for a lot of people when they get much older. But that was the underlying essence, the concept of the album, and it was done in a tongue-in-cheek spoof kind of a way. It was a parody of concept albums of the era, dressed up in a packaging that was a 16-page newspaper, which was a parody of a provincial small-town newspaper in the UK. I was hopeful that people would accept it, they would get it, and I think that the answer is that 50% of the people understood exactly what I was getting at, and the comedic aspect of it. The other 50% didn't get it, but that was pretty good, because I rather like the idea that you could be on stage and half the people are scratching their heads thinking, what? And the other half are going, yeah, I love that. It's somehow more gratifying than having everybody feel the same way about it. So I think a degree of puzzlement and curiosity is part of what makes it ultimately more enjoyable. If you have to think twice or three times or four times about it to grasp finally what it might mean for you, which is probably still different to what it means to me in terms of the lyrical references. That you can never know what's really in the writer's mind with pop lyrics or rock lyrics. It's a degree of abstracts in there that I think is what makes it attractive.
Remember, if you want to help us out, subscribe to our channel, click the bell notification. Don't miss anything we put out. Also, like our videos, comment on them, and share them on social media. I'm John Bowden. This is Rock History Music.